Welcome to Total Apex Sports. This is the fourth and goal. I'm Andrew with our guest Zach, and Greg. You can find him on. He writes a lot of stuff on the Herald and Entertainment and whatnot. But yeah, the first thing before we get into the wild card and the playoff talk this weekend, I kind of want to talk about the Dolphins and Raiders, who both made a few big changes and non-changes. I guess for the Dolphins, um, I know they can't really do much with Mike McDaniel, but with all the Tyreek Hill stuff and Jalen Ramsey, like I just don't know what they're gonna do next year. Keeping their GM Chris Greer, I'm pretty sure. Um, but yeah, Greg, I guess uh, did what are your thoughts on just like the Dolphins outlook for next year? I know they were in the playoff hunt potentially, but I didn't think they would do much anyway.
No, it seems to be like they're just treading water. Tua has his great games, and
Yeah,
he's a defensive coach, so he's always got him kind of playing good defense. But they to me they just don't. I mean, there were Tua injury from I think going 6-11. I mean, I think they're just too borderline. Unless they came up with a draft or some good free agents, I see them treading water. I don't see. You get hopeful with that team, and you start watching them, and it's just not. They're not an elite team, and they're not even. They haven't moved up to getting closer to an elite team. They have moments, but I don't see it with the Dolphins. I don't know about you guys, but I don't see massive improvement.
yeah.
Uh,
What do you think, Zach?
there seems to be a lack of forward thinking, which is confusing because there seems to be a lot of really smart people in that Dolphins front office and that Dolphins coaching staff. And you'd think they knew a while ago, years ago, that Tua probably should have a really good backup behind him. There's a good chance he's not going to play the whole season. Never once have they gone out and said, you know what, we're going to break the bank for a backup for Tua. That would show me. There's been consistent things that Dolphins have shown that I don't care how much you believe in next man up. If you don't actually put the effort to making sure the next man up are actually people and not random Madden characters, so they're
Yeah,
not. It's the same reason that the Tom Brady Patriots near the end of it faded because they never once thought beyond Tom Brady's ego. They didn't want to fight him to prepare for the future. Same with Ben Roethlisberger. They didn't want to fight him to prepare. It's happening with the Dolphins now. So I absolutely agree. Spiraling into it because whether they don't see it or they're not willing to do something about it when they see it, this Dolphins front office and coaching staff simply don't care about the future.
right. And then I also wanted to mention the Raiders. They fired Antonio Pierce yesterday or 2 days ago, and then they just made a move to fire Tom Telesco now. So I mean, obviously with Brady, with his ownership, like I think a lot of teams are trying to gun for Mike Vrabel so hard. Like the Patriots did that. They fired Gerard Mayo. After 1 year. Um, yeah, I mean, Greg, what do you think about? I guess like the Raiders moving forward. I mean, they should be looking for a quarterback, but I guess their draft capital might not suggest that unless they make a massive move.
I'm just laughing because I've been saying this for 20 years. Yeah, the Raiders are a dumpster fire. They're a dumpster fire. Their management, they
Mhm.
don't draft well. They they don't support their player. They go through coaches like, and I'm not saying that Pierce should have stayed or not stayed, but that is the most unstable organization that cannot put it together, that cannot figure out a draft. They can't even figure out first round draft choices. It's a team that gave you Jamarcus Russell. Okay. Just think about that for a minute, right? Okay. I'm an old timer. I get to say those things. So I don't have any faith that they don't even know how to move forward, right? I think they've got, some good individual players, but they always have, right? They're another team. I don't see them moving up. I don't. God, they couldn't regress any more than they are. But
Yeah, that's true.
I don't. That it's an organizational thing with them, right? It's yeah, you got to put players on the field, but it is an organizational, evaluative player thing with them. And I don't think I don't think they can rise above that. With Davis's kid, he hasn't been able to do it, and so that's where I'm at. Same every year.
Yeah, that is true. Zach?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. If there's very few consistent things in the NFL, but lately the Jets and the Raiders are two consistent things that I can trust. You know what? We know where you're going to be when we finish the season. You might have one good season in the last 2 decades or something, but there's the inability to actually want to go through what you need to rebuild the team. Because when you've been as bad as the Raiders for so long, there's no excuse for not having rebuilt it at some point. And that's the whole win now or just win, baby. That whole thing, it's getting in the way because just like the Dolphins, they can't look past what's happening that season. The fans get in their way. Whatever it says in the newspapers, their public opinion, it matters way too much. You have to lose for a couple seasons, be really, really bad, and then you can be good for a decade. It's kind of the rule. You pay your dues. They're not willing to pay their dues. So, and firing Antonio Pierce isn't going to do a thing.
No.
Yeah, I never really thought of him much more than an interim head coach. Like, I didn't understand like keeping him, and then he kind of all like with those like the win against the Saints, like that did get in the way of them having a top 5 draft pick. Like, even if the quarterback draft isn't as good, you never know. I will say I think drafting Brock Bowers was basically best player available, and like teams like the Raiders should do that, and they did hit on a all-star pick, but that's more of like an outlier. Like if you just look at I mean, the only other draft pick I can think of like recently was Max Crosby. They hit on that, but that was like, those aren't those only 2 players. Like they still haven't found the quarterback. Like I don't know what they were thinking with Gardner Minshew. But yeah,
They weren't thinking. They weren't thinking.
No. Yeah, but let's get into let's actually get into your Viking, Greg. Obviously, thoughts and prayers from us, with the California wildfires and everything. That game right now is still supposed to be in LA for Monday, but, I've heard it could go to Arizona. But, yeah, with your Viking, Greg, how confident are you, with Sam Darnold playing the Rams for a second time this year?
A couple things about it, and I mean that fire is about less than 10 miles away from the SoFi Field. So I can't see how this game's not going to get moved because those fires just keep. As long as Santa Ana wins, unfortunately, I think it looks like a move. I think Darnold will be fine. I mean, I didn't think I could ever say this, but Justin Jefferson keeps getting better, and I can't believe how you could possibly do this. But I watch this guy game in and game out, and he makes some of the most fantastic. I mean, I don't think they don't even make the highlight reel. He does so many of them. But then you've got Addison, who's done well. They've got Naylor, a third receiver, who's got 5.
Yeah.
And you got Hawk, right? And you got Aaron Jones, right? So he's got a lot of weapons. If that interior of the line can hold, he's going to be just fine, right? Rams got an okay defense, but where they ran into problems last time was Puka and Cooper just killed them. They just killed our little secondary. They did. They're physical. I mean, they were running Puka. They ran him on not even an end around, and he just killed them. They're physical, big, tall, athletic receivers, and our secondary couldn't handle it. So if you're not putting I sound like a broken record, but if you don't put the pass rush on them, those two are going to eat. They don't have an answer for those guys. They don't have a Metellus or maybe can cover them, but one-on-one. But I think they can. It's just a matter of the pass rush.
Mm-hmm. Zach, what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, if we make the assumption that it's going to be in Arizona, which I think we all believe it's going to, that's a two-edged sword that both hurts and helps the Vikings because that turf makes the Vikings faster and as fast as they want to be. But the way, Greg, you described that secondary, that is going to make the Rams receivers and Rams weapons faster.
Exactly.
And so that speed, it's it's not the secondary as a whole, it's the cornerback's ability. And if you got to keep relying on safeties to come up and give those cornerbacks help, then you're going to have so I can't see how this doesn't become a shootout. This naturally looks to me like you simply have to score more points than them, which I genuinely believe you can. I like the Rams. They're a fun team, but this Vikings team, you are serious contenders. I genuinely believe you've shown that. And there's no reason you should be playing a wild card game with the record you have. Let's all be very clear here. The anger that you are not showing from that is a lot of self-control. But yeah, you guys honestly should win this game. It might only be by 7, and it might be 47-40, but yeah, I think you will. But that speed is going to be a problem.
Who thought the AFC or NFC North would be the toughest division 3 years ago when they were the dog division? I mean,
right.
The Packers were good in that. We were okay, and that was about it. So, yeah, I mean, that game last Monday or last Sunday was 1st to 5th. Man, you lose, you go to 5th. Got to travel. So that's the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting from the Rams perspective, just because Cooper Kupp recently has been like a shell of himself. I don't know if Greg, you follow fantasy, but he like over the past back half of the season, like he's been like really bad. Like it's more been Puka. He's the guy. He's the featured weapon. And along with Karen and Matt Stafford still basically doing his thing, but it is going to be interesting to see if Kupp can get back into this game like he did earlier on this season. But yeah, in terms of the Vikings' chances, how do you think this game could potentially impact Sam Darnold and him potentially resigning or potentially leaving elsewhere in free agency?
Well, what Sam Darnold's going to do is a great guessing game in Minnesota right now because they're going. I've seen everything from they're going to re-sign him till they're not going to re-sign him. I've heard they're going to try to trade McCarthy. I think they're going to try to go to camp with both of them, and McCarthy may not be ready. Right, this guy sat out an entire year. He came early out of the draft. He's a real talent, but he may not be ready. Right, he may need a year or two behind him. And this Daniel Jones thing is what it cost.
That was another.
It cost like $127,000 because the Rams or the Giants are still paying the freight. You know what they get? They just put them on the active roster. You know why? Because if somebody picks them up, they get a draft choice out of it. And that was really an administrative move. Okay, I like the guy, but everybody seems to treat it like it's even when the season started, everybody says, well, McCarthy went out. He was going to start. No, Darnold was still going to start because they were going to work McCarthy in, right? Everybody trying to make a big drama thing about that. So I think you really are going to have to go to camp with both guys. I think he's solidified. I mean, I think he showed that if he has the ability to play in this league, I mean, I think he has to have certain situations that make him successful, i.e. a good offensive coordinator. And I mean, obviously talented receivers. That's almost like anybody. I think 2 games in a row would hurt him, but I don't think it puts him asunder. I just think I think he's had too good a year. I mean, you're talking MVP 2 weeks ago with this guy, right? Not serious, but a contender. So yeah, I think he's okay.
Yeah, I've heard some of the JJ McCarthy stuff. He's so young. I think next year he would be like 22, 23. Like I don't see a world where he gets moved. I mean, it's really going to depend on Darnold's market. Like it's either going to be him starting the year or McCarthy, and then whoever else competing. But
you guys have the chance to do exactly what I was saying no other teams are going to do. You have a guy on a rookie contract who looks good. Pay Darnold what he wants now that you would have been paying McCarthy. See how you it's a beautiful situation if you guys treat this right. So I'm going to be watching that like a hawk because I'm like, this is what you need. Every team needs this because very few teams have a starting quarterback that make it from beginning to end. And to have a guy that can step in, play great, and then step back off and keep learning. that's the dream for me. So I'm envious of that situation, considering the situation we're in right now.
And the Vikes have they have cap room, which they haven't had in here, but they got rid of Danielle Hunter and some other people that were, and they might get rid of Harrison Smith. They're pretty good in the cap space, right? They don't have a lot of draft choices, so they're going to have to work some things with that. But I think you're stupid if you don't go to camp with both guys.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting for the defensive matchup because it's like, the Vikings have kind of leaned on their defense to win games. And then sometimes when Jefferson is getting a lot of attention, he's thrown to other guys like Naylor, like you said, and Jordan Addison, who made the most out of his opportunity. So, I mean, it's gonna be a fun. I think this one and the I think there's two others: the AFC North game, and then the Commander Washington game. Those are like the three closest that I can think of.
Yeah. I think the Vikings game. I think Zach's straight on, which is I think it's just going to be a roller skate shootout. I think get your get firmly in your seats because there's going to be a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I was gonna interrupt this messaging to shamelessly plug Total Effect Sports on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, etc. We do a daily show Tuesdays and Thursdays most of the time. But yeah, let's get into the meat of the playoffs this weekend. With let's talk about the Ravens Steelers because me and Zach were talking about this line of them getting favored 9.5. That is insane to me. I would not bet that even as a Ravens fan. I would not bet that. Zach, what are your thoughts on this game?
Apparently, whoever did that has never ever watched the Steelers Ravens game because we 2.5 sometimes seems like a lot for that. So no, the biggest thing for me here is that the fact that it's still that after the Zay Flowers announcement is I don't know if I can use the word insulting considering the losing streak we're on, but it's as close to insulting as I can feel right now. So because we earned some of it, but that 9.5, come on, man.
But Vegas always knows something. I've seen these weird. Like when the Vikings win, what game was it? They went in and they were like, the Packers were 1.5 over the Vikings at Minnesota. There's these weird things that happen, I agree. I think it's 7 points over what it should be, but it's strange. It's strange. How do you feel about the Steelers, Zach? Tell me how you feel about Steelers coming in.
I've been searching for reasons to feel positive, but the Zay Flowers announcement was genuinely the first time I was like, okay, it doesn't even anything out, but considering that mixed with this is the first time maybe in a decade that I can remember a completely healthy mainly completely healthy Steelers team is going in. We're normally missing TJ Watt, Antonio Brown, or Le'Veon Bell, or Ben Roethlisberger. We're missing someone. We're healthy going into this game. And going into this game on the other side, you're missing your top pass catcher. It's not named Mark Andrews. It makes it a little easier for an offense that has had trouble, for a defense that has trouble really handling wide receivers and tight ends. We've had the number of some mobile quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, all that, but that Zay Flowers thing. Steeler Nation, I'm just saying, Steeler Nation, you got to calm down a bit. We didn't win the game because Zay Flowers is out. Everyone take a breath. We still got to play it. Okay? Yes, it's big. Right. But honestly, that's the biggest thing that I noticed. So, and the fact that Harbaugh didn't look concerned about it makes me a little more concerned about it now. I have to say, he shrugged it off.
No, he's the great card player in the NFL. He's one of those coaches that, what's behind the curtain, right?
Yeah, I will say for as much crap I give with John Harbaugh, he's kind of turned the corner a little bit with the most recent wins. Now, in the playoffs, we have to see because in terms of a track record and stuff, I just hope they run the ball a lot with Derrick Henry like last time. But the Steelers are going to know that, so it's just going to be interesting. Rashad Bateman's likely going to be, he's going to step in, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like Nelson Aguilar, he's been inactive for a few weeks, dealing with a concussion, but he'll probably play this game. And Tylan Wallace, like all these other guys, and then obviously Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. But there's going to be the recency bias was there from just based off the last result, but it'll probably be somewhere in between.
I think Andrews is the one consistent receiver that they have. So, I mean, I think you're going to see the Bateman, who's a former golfer, right? So I know all about him, but he's been a little bit more consistent this year. But he's kind of been an all or nothing type guy, right? He catches a big pass or he catches one or two passes a game. So he has never had that consistent. He's been better this year. But Andrews will be a big deal. And, I think Lamar Jackson is, Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson. He can equalize a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm hoping his mom is on the sideline for this game so she can cuss him out for not running enough.
Now, the way I expect this game to go, and you feel free to quote me if you want. I genuinely believe that the script is going to follow this. That it's going to be close. The Steelers' defense is going to force at least one turnover early. The turning point is going to be whether the Steelers' offense capitalizes on any mistakes in that first half. If the Steelers' defense has forced 2 turnovers and we have scored no points off of that's game to me, because that's a wasted thing and we're not a second half team. So watch it follow that. I just don't know where that turning point is. That's been the problem in the last few games. We haven't gotten turnovers in the first little bit, and that's what won us the games early. So turnovers is going to be the lead here. If Derrick Henry fumbles unexpectedly, if Lamar Jackson gets in his head, or if the other way around, if the protection does not hold up for Russell Wilson, he gets into Russell Wilson savior mode again, he's going to throw picks. Because that's we have terrible protection, and Russell Wilson's worst characteristic is that he every once in a while feels he's the only one that can win a game. He has not been. Very, very few games in Russell Wilson's career have been won exclusively because of Russell Wilson. And I don't think people around him are telling that enough. So people around Russell Wilson, if for some reason you're turning into the show, sit him down and just a reality check would be great. Because this is going to need to be 22 players and an amazing special teams all coming together. And my podcast, I'm on Steelers Anchor. We didn't really appreciate when I said this particular thing, but I truly believe this is where a Steelers A+ needs to beat a Ravens C performance. There's a gap between these teams. We need you guys to play rough, and we need to play perfect. I'm not in denial about that at all.
Yeah. Not a 9.5 gap, but there is a gap.
Yeah,
I agree. Good point.
I think Jordan, our fellow Total Apex writer, made a comment on the Steelers and the Vikings. I actually think this is kind of a trend all year, but the kickers are just gonna matter. Like it's really Boswell's been the top kicker, I would say, this whole season. Tucker had been in the NFL. Yeah, Tucker's been not as great, but recently, he's been hitting all the kicks. So, and then the Vikings, I don't even have to mention their the
I'm gonna hunt Jordan down after that one.
It's actually a good point, Andrew. Because it's Steelers Ravens and it's the weird old schoolness part of the game. I can see late in the nearing halftime, either Justin Tucker or Chris Boswell is up for a big field goal, and a miss or a make is what really launches the emotion. Because I can see if Justin Tucker misses a big one, the Steeler sideline would go crazy. Everyone will be mocking him for that. Chris Boswell misses one, same thing. I love that you said that kickers are going to be not just a big part X factor, but an emotional swing because it's the Steelers Ravens. Great point.
It may come down to that kick. It may come down to that kick.
Yeah, Ravens Steelers playoffs. I remember what is it that Super Bowl run for the Ravens with the well, not their run, but before that with Billy Condiff, man, I'm not even gonna. I don't know why I brought that up, but the kicking game, like in these close. I mean, it's just a wild card, but the stakes are all time high. I feel like it just couldn't it doesn't. It's not the championship yet, or even like the divisional round. But I feel like we already got a lot of very interesting wild card games, to say the least.
Oh,
but I guess probably not the worst game on paper, but it definitely makes sense why they put this on the first game, Chargers Texans. I mean, based on how the Chargers have been playing, I mean, I don't, even though they're going into Houston, I don't see how they lose this game. Greg, what were your thoughts on the Chargers and Texans, and yeah.
I don't think the Chargers are going to go very far, but you know what? They're one of those teams that's kind of peaking at a really nice time, and the improvements they've had on their defense have been phenomenal. I mean, that's what, and I've always been kind of a Herbert fan. I've seen him make some incredible throws, right? But that defense that brought him home. And I don't think, I'm with you, Andrew. I don't think the Texans can keep up with them. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout, but I don't see the Texans taking down the Chargers in this one.
Yeah, the Houston has been they've been dealing with a lot of injuries, like obviously early on in the year, and most recently with their receivers. But yeah, in fact, I think I know where you're going with it based on our previous talks about the Texans.
And Texans are in kind of a similar place to the Steelers, a little better because they're not like dragging themselves in. But at least from talking to there's Texan fans in my family and all that, there's not hopelessness. It's just a lot of reality. There's a lot of reality in Houston right now. But with the Chargers, the other Harbaugh is what I refer to him as because I get them mixed up. So it's the Ravens Harbaugh and the other Harbaugh. I'm getting shades of early Pete Carroll from him. That I'm going to bring this college feeling into this. It's going to work really, really early. I remember that from Pete Carroll. That's scary in the playoffs. I remember no one wanted to play the. So I feel the Texans have a chance to make a weird Cinderella run, but this Chargers team, they're running like the Steelers want to. They're playing defense like every team in the league wants to, and they love their head coach. And that honestly, weirdly enough, all those X factors really mean a lot when you get to this point where it's 0-0, no records matter, and you're just playing another team. So Texans fans might have some heart and reality check, but I really like the Chargers in this. I don't liking a Harbaugh, but I'll root for one.
But I think the other thing that's really hurt the Texans is, are there any receivers left on that team? They went through their whole cadre of everybody's been hurt. Tank, they've all been hurt at one point. And now, Diggs is out for the year. And they just haven't had a lot of A-grade targets for the last half of the season.
Yeah, it pushes a lot of pressure on Nico Collins. If I were the Chargers, I would put double coverage on him because I haven't seen John Mechie, Robert Woods. They haven't really done anything all year. They're both going to try to establish the run, obviously.
Right.
I will say it might be cool. I do agree with the Chargers line being 3 points for an away team is still pretty close. I would say based on their most recent games, just because the Texans do have a good defense and pass rush that can get after Herbert. So that is the other interesting thing. Zach, in terms of if you wanted the Steelers to play a playoff team other than the Ravens, obviously you were hoping that it would be the Chargers this weekend, but it's not, unfortunately.
No, it's okay. And I do say it's a really harsh reality thing I got to take when Houston has to have multiple wide receiver injuries and their wide receiver room is still better than the Steelers' wide receiver room at full health. That's painful. Because so yeah. What Houston is dealing with now, we've dealt with all season. So.
I want to ask that. Can I ask that a real question? A quick question about the Steelers. Is there any way that Tomlin walks?
Oh no, no. We actually have discussed this at length on our last episode of Steelers Sanctuary. That pretty much it's up to Tomlin, and Tomlin likes the amount of control he has here. He probably wouldn't get it on any other team, and the truth is, he has a ridiculous amount of control at to the detriment of the team in a lot of points. And that for someone with, regardless of how much I like him, regardless, he has an ego, and he likes where he is, and I don't. And the Steelers let him play the way he wants to, which is a way that I feel is a little old school for the modern NFL. But I don't think he's going to go anywhere. He's not going to get traded. He's not. I would love if for some reason we went against Steeler tradition and cleaned house with coordinators and got people in that would actually challenge him. But I don't think it's going to happen. So that would surprise me greatly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I guess I was kind of asking you before the show, depending on I guess how they perform, let's just say, could they potentially, because I saw Arthur Smith was getting a few head coaching interviews and things of that nature. Also at they're the Steelers defensive coordinator. Their defense has been, it's been up and down. Like they held the Bengals pretty good last week, but before that, there were, I think you mentioned on shows before a lot of pointing fingers, that type of thing. I guess what are your thoughts on if not Tomlin, then are they going to do like what the Bengals did, and just get rid of somebody?
Well, to put it in perspective, when the Steelers fired Matt Canada midseason, it was the very first time in Steelers history we had done that. So we don't do that.
Yeah.
We just simply don't. We do not fire. We don't. Even when Bruce Arians famously was fired, he was a mutual decision for him to retire. It was really so we don't do that in Pittsburgh. Now, granted, we're trying to bring in a new era. Omar Khan coming in, Andy Weidel coming in, a GM and GM assistant. I wouldn't mind that. I feel it's necessary. Because I hope maybe it happens in another way where Arthur Smith gets another job. I wish him well. Arthur, take every single call you get. They're all good, every single one of them. Plus, Arthur Smith's family are billionaires. He doesn't need the money. He's from a very wealthy family. So honestly, I would prefer if he was just like, you know what, I'm very good at this coordinator thing, and just left. I'd be fine with that because it's step up from Matt Canada. But
I'm sorry, Zach. Go ahead. It is kind of Tomlin's world, though. I mean, he's got it the way he wants it, right? And so he's got guys that are loyal to him, and he's loyal to them, right? So I think there's even less of a chance that you're not going to see an exodus of assistant coaches going out the door. It's never happened with him, and I like him, but he's got it the way. That was a good point, Zach. He's got it exactly the way he wants it. He could go somewhere and get more money. But if the honeymoon doesn't last 5 games, he's gonna go. I should have went back to Pittsburgh.
The Steelers have the smallest staff of coaches in the entire NFL. We don't have a lot of assistants. We don't have there's no depth. We're not like the Rams who have like 19 people for every single position. And that starts to matter because Tomlin's not that great at delegating certain things. So there is either no pressure, a lot of it's a very up and down with a very small amount of coaches. So ripples, none of it is good. And that's old school football. That needs to change too.
He runs the defense, basically, right? I mean, he's always run the defense there. Tomlin.
It's not Terrell Austin's just there because we need someone as a coordinator. It's Tomlin running the defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got a comment from Ronald Crosby, go Vikings. I actually did want to bring it back to the Vikings because, I heard some, they're kind of doing it with the Niners, but the Bears are desperately searching for a head coach. And I've heard talks like, oh, they're going to bring in someone surprising. Like they could even trade draft capital for a head coach. Like I saw some stuff about KOC, but I just there's no way.
I just laugh at these things. I think people get around, it gets me midweek and they don't have enough to talk about. So they come up with crap like this. And somebody writes one thing and oh, that's an interesting angle. They don't trade for coaches very often, but they could, and he's such a hot commodity. KLC's not going anywhere right now, right? And him and Queasy, the GM, they're kind of a package deal, right? I'm not saying one couldn't go before the other, but they're kind of a package deal, and they both stay within their turf. O'Connell gets to say a lot about the on the field stuff, and he gets input in, and Queasy's kind of the business guy, right? And he's got a good assistant GM that knows some football stuff. O'Connell's got it where he wants it right now. He's got a great offensive coordinator. He's got a McNown as a quarterback coach. He still runs the offense. I don't know a scenario where that would happen. He certainly, I mean, if he goes to the Bears, I'm going to have his head examined.
Yeah, there's a lot of,
I think
everybody.
I think this is idle NFL chatter for people that don't have enough to write about.
Yeah, right. Let's get into the big Sunday slate. Broncos at Bills. It's 8.5. I think that might be kind of a big spread too. I mean, I know, Denver, like Sean Payton, this is like with the rookie QB, it's their first time there. So it should be mostly Buffalo at home, but I actually think there's a chance that maybe the Denver can do a few things that, we've seen Buffalo's defense kind of fall apart at times, especially, against the Rams and other teams. So I think, Denver could do something, but I'm not sure if they're ultimately going to win, obviously. Zach, what do you think about this matchup?
I agree. I think the Bills will win this game, but there's going to be at least 1 point in this game, not a big stretch, but a point where everyone watching is going to go, did anyone expect the Broncos to be doing this? I don't know what it's going to be. It's either going to be like a 10-point lead if they're going to – something early is going to happen where everyone's going to be like, yeah, and then the Bills will do this. Because this year, the Bills are going to go as far as Josh Allen wills them to go. Mm-hmm. And let me make this very clear. I do not like Josh Allen. I hope he loses every single game for the rest of his career. But This year, he wants this badly. He is always third in conversations. It's always Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, then him. It's always then him. He wants to be not just in that conversation. He wants to be in a Super Bowl. And honestly, if he doesn't do it this year, I don't know what. So the Broncos, fun story. Defense is going to take them a little bit in this game, but the Bills, it's not just a powerhouse. It's just that will of Josh Allen to get them there. I trust that. I trust it. Don't like it. I trust it.
Yeah.
I think the Broncos defense makes it close for a while. I think Allen, he's on a mission, right? It's what Zach said. He's on a mission, right? I don't know if that's going to take him all the way, but I don't think the Knicks has done all right and all that, but I think it's going to be a thing where you might see a close game at halftime. You might see 10-10. You might see something like that. And I think the Bills prevail in the long run because I think Allen's going to want it that bad. And there is a bit of a talent gap.
Yeah, I think there's blood in the water. These kind of competitors. Because I think Josh Allen if I was Josh Allen looking around, I'm like, okay, there's any year I'm going to be Patrick Mahomes. It's this year. Then he looks over. He's like, the Steelers have always had Lamar Jackson's number. There's a chance I only have to face one of these guys this year. So he's probably feeling more and more like this is my year. If there's any year, he's a dangerous man this season.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Josh Allen talk obviously goes into like the MVP discussion. It's pretty wide this year. I think Josh Allen ain't gonna win. I mean, obviously, I'm a Lamar truther, but he can take his. I mean, but when they did the All-Pro voting with the players, that kind of Lamar Jackson won that. So in terms of like MVP voting and stuff, he's definitely shown. Even like when they traded Diggs away and they have like. We didn't know who was going to emerge as the top target. I mean, it's mostly been Shakir, but it's also been just, the scheme and the group effort by Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper. We haven't really heard about like Amari Cooper. He hasn't really done much after the trade, but it's kind of like you brought him in like for these types of games, for sure. But yeah, then the next one up we have Packers at Eagles. Um, I think I talked about this in the other show. I really don't see how Green Bay can beat Philly when they're all healthy, and I think they're going to be this weekend. Greg, what do you think about Matt Brown's Packers?
Yeah. Here's the deal. And I think Hurts is going to be back, but he's been 2 weeks on the protocol, and he started the week on the protocol, right? It just concerns me a little bit about. I mean, they're not going to put him in there hurt, but that's quite a while in the protocol. So I'm just wondering. I'm not so much his conditioning or anything like that. I'm just interested to see is he fully back.
Right.
Packers are an interesting team because at the start of the season, I said I thought that they were the second most talented team in our division, right? And I don't know if I still believe that. The Vikings had some surprises. But the Packers are a hard team to figure out because sometimes they look like world beaters. And, I mean, they're deceptive because people can name probably one or two of their wide receivers. And now Christian Watson's out, which is their bomb guy. But they've got like 17, 22-year-old receivers, right? But they do pretty well. Obviously, Jacobs is a quality back. Their defense is their secondary is a little brittle. If the Eagles are at full strength, yeah, I mean it'll be fun to watch Barkley and Jacobs go at it a little bit, I think. But if Hurts is truly healthy, I think it's the Eagles.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the Packers are confusing. I don't really know how to place them. They seem like they should be considered a powerhouse, but they don't always play like it.
Mm-hmm.
So this game, I think it's very simple for the Eagles. Saquon Barkley is going to be supercharged. He is happy to be here. He is loving this revenge tour that he got to go on, and that's who I think should be the MVP. It won't happen. He's a running back, but it's who I think should be the MVP. And I would just tell the Eagles, listen, just run it. But if Hurts doesn't play, it does set up a nightmare scenario for me where the Steelers lose, and then I have to watch Kenny Pickett win. So I really don't think I could handle that. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm looking into the future. I'm like, if fate really wants to kick me in the face, it would do that to me. So I hope Jalen Hurts is healthy, get better, but
Barkley's going to have a great game, and there's one reason. Because he's really, really gonna piss off my friend Jordan Rambles, who's listening to us right now. Our long-suffering Giants fan. That's for you, Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about it like 2 weeks ago when Hurts did go out with a concussion. Brandon was saying, like, oh, I would kind of like him back for one more week, even in a meaningless week, just to see him, the offense fully clicking, and, that didn't happen. So, the Eagles already don't start off that fast. They're like the Ravens. They start off pretty slow for whatever reason. But yeah, we're probably going to get a lot of the running backs in this game with Saquon and, Jacobs. But yeah, with the Jordan Love injury he had last week in that loss, that is interesting because I saw something where like they didn't want reporters filming them practice, so maybe it might be a something to look at, throughout the game to see how. I think it was like a pinky or something, or something with the throwing hand, but yeah, I mean I think along with the Lions, the Eagles are definitely one of the top NFC teams when fully healthy, to compete with them. But yeah,
just because I see a lot of Packers, Jordan's had like minor injuries going down the stretch. wrenched his knee a little bit. He's got the finger, and he's one of those guys you can kind of tell when he's injured. He doesn't ask to come out, but it's kind of visible with this guy, right? And I'm not saying he's not tough. So I think he's been banged around a little bit, and we'll see how he comes into this game.
Right. This is the other game that is very interesting to me. It might be this. I guess they're giving the Bucks 3 just because it's at home, but to me, this is a coin flip game just because Washington has had their ups and downs, but they've finished pretty well when they've needed to late in games. So yeah, Zach, for the Commanders at Buccaneers, what are your thoughts for that?
This is the NFC's version of Chargers and Texans. That's what it is. That's all this is. Because it has the ability to be an interesting game. Whoever wins, you don't really expect them to go too much further after that. But it also has the potential to really be a weird 7-5 final score kind of thing, where so I really don't know what is that. The Buccaneers, just like the Bills, although not in the same category, are kind of going to go where Baker Mayfield decides they're going to go, his moxie and all that. But I really can't see either of these teams making it a really big Cinderella story. So just make it a good game. That's the most I can hope out of this.
Right.
Pure enjoyment of watching the game, though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't often do this with a microcosm of the game, but Daniels versus Baker, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Daniels comes in as a rookie. Baker was written off a couple of years ago and had a phenomenal season. So in these two character studies of these two guys, it's very, very interesting. It doesn't always come down to that, but I think it's a good side note for this game to entertain folks.
Yeah. Both defenses, I don't think, are going to take them anywhere close to, past the divisional round next week or anything. But, good for Mike Evans to get that 1,000 yards because, him and Baker, they've been a consistent duo. Even with Marshawn Lattimore for Washington, I don't know. I don't really trust their defense. But yeah, it should be a shootout for this game. I guess the last thing we haven't really talked about is the obviously the Lions and Chiefs. Greg, in terms of the Lions as a division rival, do you think this is their year to make the Super Bowl or?
Well, I said at midseason they were by far the best team in the league. And I saw them. They were dominant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Goff was great. He's got good receivers. This was when Montgomery was playing, and they had two good backs going at him. They've been injured down the stretch. I think they're obviously still an elite team, but they were down to one cornerback last week when they played us, right? So, well, I think they're gonna. I think they'll make the championship game. I think they could win it all. Hutchinson's, they have a lot of things. He's supposedly back for the Super Bowl if they make it that far. I just think they've hit injuries. Lions teams historically, and again, I'm old, but Lions historically teams don't play bad. They get injured, right? And this goes back to way back. So I think if they can mitigate their injuries and get some of these secondary guys back, I think they'll be fine. Chiefs are a funny team to me because everybody says, oh, Chiefs are down. Or were they, 15-2? It's like, okay, there's no doubt Mahomes didn't have a great year. There's no doubt he should not have been in that Pro Bowl. But that defense is the real deal, right? And they can win any kind of game, right? If Mahomes goes off, they can win a barn burner, and they can win a defensive game. I'm not saying they should be the favorite. Do you really ever count them out?
Yeah, that is true. As much crap we AFC fans give the Chiefs, normally any team with 2 or 3 weeks of rest would be like, oh, can they shake the rust off? But with Andy Reid and whatnot, like they've done this before. So, but Zach, real quick, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Bengals and what they did with their defensive coordinator Luana Rumo. Like, do you think that was the right? Well, I guess for a Steelers fan, you're gonna say that was the right decision, but I guess what are your thoughts on the Bengals just in general?
Well, for part of my other podcast, we've been watching Hard Knocks and doing a recap the next day, and it's been really, really, really painful over the last 4 weeks to have to rewatch it, and watch it in detail. But Hard Knocks gave me a present on the last, because they finished the episode with the Bengals watching their playoff hopes collapse on TV. So I got to sit there, and it made me smile. It did, because the AFC North, there's respect, but there's a lot of hate. So when you get to see that, knowing you just beat us, you celebrated because you thought you had done it. And now, and especially in a year where Joe Burrow deserved it, because he really got let down by his defense. It's one of the few joys that I've had in the last little bit watching the Bengals just have the wind taken out of their sails.
Was that worth the whole Hard Knock season, seeing that?
Yes, it was. Because Hard Knocks was really good for 3 weeks, and then it's been really bad for 4 weeks. So yeah, it was a wonderful way to finish that episode. But the firing of the coordinator is exactly what they should have done. Their defense was laughable. We have a terrible offense, so we put 44 up on them at one point. We have no business putting 44 up on people. We win with 20 points. Thank you very much. What we do.
Yeah, right. I have to end off the show, Greg. The last show we kind of touched on. Also you can chime in, Zach, on some of the coaching fires and I guess non-fires in terms of the Giants, Jags. There's a few floating around there. Obviously, the Raiders, like one of the teams we talked about. Yeah, I mean, do you think any of these teams are going to be one to watch for next year, or more of like we're just going to have to see what they do in the offseason?
I mean, I don't know what the prospects are for the Bears, Jets, Raiders, Jags.
Yeah.
I mean, would you go to the Jets? get a GM and a coach fired? I mean, Jacksonville. Doug Peterson actually is not a bad coach. That's not a good situation down there. Who wants the Bears job? Zach, you want it? You can have it. I mean, who would want to go with that owner? The way that they draft and the way that they evaluate players, that's a torture job, right? You might as well just, these aren't plum jobs, right? I don't know if I see any of them making much movement. I said before the season, so I saw Rodgers, I just saw Aaron Rodgers a lot. So the year before he got hurt, he had a very average season. And I said, he's like anybody else, right? He's on the way down, right? He's still good. So then he goes with Achilles, and then he comes back. And I said, the Jets still, everybody goes Super Bowl. And I'm like, the Jets still aren't a great team, you guys. I mean, with Salah, they had a decent defense, but this wasn't a team that was going to blow you over, right? And he kind of played like a 42-year-old quarterback. No offense to the guy, he's a Hall of Famer. But I don't know where you start with that organization. Yeah, you've got a decent defense, but it's a nightmare.
Yeah. Zach,
I can't imagine. I don't know how you can be a head coach in this day and age, because there has to be so much lying to yourself about the process. Because I would never be able to. I would come in and I would go to a place with the Jets. I'm like, okay, listen, we're gonna be really bad for like 3 years, and then we're gonna be good, but we're gonna be really, really bad. And here's my process. I would be kicked out at that point. because they want to hear how we're going to be good this year. And you have to convince yourself, knowing it's not true, okay, we're going to be good this year. And then tell other grown men who are relying on you for their careers. Yeah, no wonder so many people don't make it, because everyone is lying to themselves about it.
But how much do you also walked in and said to Woody Herman, "Can we fire the owner?"
Yeah, a lot of comes down to ownership and sell the team and whatnot. Like, it's basically not gonna, because like even if they say, oh, we'll give you 3 years, like they're gonna be fed up in like a year and a half. Like, it's not gonna.
No fan, because the fans don't want to look long term. I try to be the long term guy in some of my general things, and it doesn't really work with a lot of things because no one wants to wait that long. And I'm like, that's how long it takes. You pay your dues and then you win. It's I use my Pittsburgh Penguins as a wonderful thing. We were terrible. We set records for how bad we were for a little bit, and we got Sidney Crosby and Malkin and Fleur, and then we won for 17 straight seasons. But we were really like laughably bad. So you've got to put up with it. And people today, because of how much money in it, I can't imagine being a head coach. I'm glad I get to talk about it rather than do it, because it has to be exhausting.
But it doesn't help even being a favorite son. I mean, look what when Archell went. Oakland, the Raiders love Archell, right? He's a god there. They ran him right out on the rails, right? I'm not saying he was a great coach, but you can't even be a favorite son of these teams and last, because the honeymoon is shorter and shorter each year.
Yeah. Or you're on the other side of it, where we are, and we keep having non-losing seasons, and we're okay, but we never get draft picks to fix anything. Yeah. So the middle of the spectrum is what we're looking for, guys.
Yeah. Greg, in terms of like, and Zach, obviously, in terms of like non-firing, like sort of what the Giants did, and there's like, I think there was a few other teams that could have made moves. What are your thoughts on giving? Because I've been reading stuff about the Giants. Jordan was saying like, they basically have to show massive improvement, potentially like playoffs next year. So like that, you're basically delaying potentially the inevitable where they both get canned. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that type of prospect and whatnot?
Well, Giants are a good example. I don't know how the Giants are going to improve dramatically, right? I just don't know how they're going to do it. And it's not just I mean, they've got a lot of issues, right? And I just don't, unless you're going to go crazy in free agency, and I don't think you can draft yourself there in a year. That's the thing. I just, if they were told get to 6 wins or 7 wins, maybe. I mean,
yeah.
They've been bad for a couple of years now. They're really bad, really stinky bad. I just don't see him. I don't see a market improvement.
Right. I mean, another team, for example, it's the Colts with the, Chris Ballard and, Shane Steichen. We've talked some about Anthony Richardson and that decision. They're gonna have to ride it out another year. I mean, and then also the Titans, obviously, they fire their GM, even though I think every year for like the last 3-4 years they basically fired either their head coach or a GM or some coordinator. Like I guess, Zach, what are your thoughts on those two teams?
The Titans are genuinely, why I use them as an example for what I call it the other side of Tomlin. Well, everyone who's like, Tomlin's there, I'm like, that's what you get. I'm like, we do this. That's what you enter. So if you want it, that's great. But it's the truth. So what was the other team you mentioned?
The
Sorry?
the Colts. The
Oh,
Colts.
well, the Colts are actually they're a team who I believe is in one of the worst positions because they had a chance to cut ties with who I believe is a toxic player. I believe Anthony Richardson deciding to just decide he was tired on that was a huge red character flag. And the second they let him back into the starting lineup, I'm like, you hitched your wagon to him. He is now your problem. You can't get rid of him, and your jobs are now linked to him. So that it is a ticking time bomb there because that kind of character issue when it's not called down and when it's enabled, it's only going to get worse. Hashtag Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ultimate poison pill.
Yeah, I mean these are young kids at some point. I understand that they have a certain amount of power and money because of the drafting, but you got to sit them down and that is one place where Mike Tomlin does excel. He can contain these issues until he can't, and then they're gone. This is not containment. So honestly, I would say the Titans are in a better position than the Colts because at least the Titans have a little bit of freedom to move around. The Colts, it's built around Anthony Richardson. Enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, well, I know he's young, obviously, and you know, I did hear some things about like, oh, like he's not, you know, that vocal leader you kind of want in a quarterback. But I mean, the thing is, like, I get like, oh, he did all that running around. I mean, going back to that, like, what was that, like week 8 or something?
Yeah.
I've never seen Lamar ever quit on a play. Like, it's just like a trait, I guess you kind of have. But I mean, yeah, that's gonna do it for the 4th and goal on Total Apex Sports. Like and subscribe. In fact, where can they find your work?
Steeler Sanctuary. We do podcasts and all that other stuff. I am also a regular guest here on Total Apex as well. So hopefully, one of us is going to be sad next week. There's no getting around it. So one of us is going to be very sad.
Yeah.
Most of my stuff's on Total Apex. That counts sports. But I'm across the dial on that. Happy to do this podcast. It's a lot of fun with you guys, so I really appreciate. Andrew knows I can come on every once in a while and talk old timer stuff. So it's a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and it should be an interesting weekend, right?
Right. But that's gonna do it. We'll be back on next Tuesday, most likely to recap this weekend and then cover obviously the next round of playoff, which is the divisional round. I mean, I will say, like, in terms of, I guess, high stakes, like I was saying before, like this wildcard, it probably, like, with all the NFL parity and stuff, even though like most of the teams were done by like week 10, I feel like there's a lot of competition at the top, which is very interesting. And yeah, we'll see how that does. But yeah, follow us at Total Apex Sports. We have entertainment, gaming, Herald, and